Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel for another holiday video series video. And today I'm working on another card project using a bunch of the Tim Holtz and Sizzix dies that were part of this year's holiday release. I absolutely love this Fireside die set. I think it's so cool. And I cut out the mantle of the fireplace with some Ranger wood grain cardstock. And now I'm just taking some distress ink in gathered twigs just to add a little bit of brown color to that white wood grain cardstock. And I finished that all up there. You can see how that looks. And I'm going to start adding a little bit of distress ink to the other pieces. The really cool thing about these dies is that everything is all layered. So yes, you have a lot of tiny little pieces, but it just creates a really cool effect when you're all done. So I just went into my ink stash and I grabbed a bunch of different colors of ink that I thought would kind of add a little bit of detail to these different little pieces. And I'm just using my distressed ink tool here just to add a little bit of ink to the edges of these papers to create a little bit of that definition. So just using a bunch of different colors, some pumice stone and some black soot. And I think in this process, I use maybe some rusty hinge and just whatever you have though in your stash. If you are going to try to create an effect like this, it's just use what you have, whatever's going to complement the different pieces here and give them a little bit of definition. So here I think I'm going in with a little bit of darker ink and just trying to create a little bit more of a darker edge on those paper pieces. So I'm just going to finish that up here. And once I've got the inks added to the different pieces here, I'm going to go ahead and get those all stuck down. So you can see that layered onto the mantle is this little piece of gray cardstock that's meant to look like stone, and this little stone hearth piece down on the bottom as well. Then I've also got a piece of kind of an orangey cardstock here that I'm going to add in behind the fire. Now I'm using all of the cardstocks that I'm using here that are colored cardstock is the Kraft colored cardstock from Tim Holtz as well. This is the classic pad, and I absolutely love this cardstock because it's the Kraft paper that has the layer of color over top of it. And so when you go in with a distressing tool or a sanding tool, it's really easy to get that distress look because of the Kraft base on that paper. I am going to show that to you here during the process so you can see how that works and what that looks like. Now I'm just taking this distress tool again and adding some definition to that little flame piece there as well. Now I'm going to use a Kraft card base, which is an A2 size card base here, and I'm adding some patterned paper from the Tim Holtz Holiday pattern paper 8x8 pad. I want this to look like wallpaper behind the little scene that I'm going to be creating. So I cut that patterned paper out with a stitched rectangle die from My Favorite Things, and I've added that down to my card base. And now I'm going to start to layer my Fireside die cut pieces on this background. So I've got my little mantle there, my little wood grain piece popped up on some foam adhesive. And now I'm just going to take some liquid adhesive and layer all of these other pieces on top. So the only piece so far that has some dimension is that wood grain piece, the mantle. The rest is all going to just be layered flat on top of each other. So there's everything from this little bit of greenery that's hanging on the mantle, and there's going to be a little bow and a couple of stockings there. But before I add those details, I'm going to go back in and I'm going to add these darker brown pieces that were cut to add onto the wood grain piece, the mantle, to give it a little bit more interest and definition. I think this is just brilliant. I know that there's a lot of tiny little pieces. You're probably maybe thinking in your head, wow, that's a lot of tiny pieces. But I love this process. I think it's super cool. It does take some time, but it's actually really relaxing. And what I find is that the effect that it gives, the finished product, is totally worth it. It's kind of like a little piece of art when you're done. And it's really cool how these are all created to make some really interesting, like a lot of different kinds of projects, right? If you watch some of Tim Holtz's videos and you see what his design team creates with all of these dies, it's unbelievable what they make. So now I didn't have enough of this pattern paper to make my middle section of my trifold card here that I'm going to be making. I didn't have enough of that pattern paper to cover all 3 sections. So I decided to make the middle section of my trifold card a little bit smaller. And this is really easy to do. I just trim down the sort of like the neck section of craft cardstock to be about the same size as this middle section. So I'm just going to cut this down by about 1 inch or so, or 3/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to glue that middle section onto the other middle section. So basically you take 2 A2 size card bases and add them together, creating that center part there that is the middle of the trifold piece, if that makes sense. Now I'm going to take another piece of that patterned paper that's going to be like my wallpaper, and add it to the front part, or the first rectangle of this 3 rectangle piece. So there's going to be 2 scored areas there to create this trifold, and my middle sections are glued together now, which creates these 3 different panels. And you can see how that's going to sit really nicely for the recipient to display. Now I want to create a little scene for my middle section. So I'm going to use the Festive Things die set to create the little scene in the middle. So I'm going to cut this little presents piece here. I'm just showing you, I'm going to cut that little candle too and put that candle on my mantle. I'm going to cut these little presents. I'm going to cut those 3 times to create 3 presents. I'm going to cut the tree, and I'm going to cut the little wreath. And here I'm just showing you this little sanding tool where you can sand just to create some distressing. And that actually really creates a lot of really interesting dimension with your piece. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do my tree in a light green or a dark, so I actually cut both, and I'm going to try both. I didn't feel like the dark showed up as well on that wallpaper paper. I just felt like the brighter green looked better and was more showy. So I am going to use that brighter green, and I'm going to put it into a little kind of an orangey toned pot. That's going to be the little pot for the Christmas tree to slide into. This die actually has a little slot in it in that little tree pot, and so the little stem of the tree, or the trunk of the tree, I should say, is going to fit nicely into that little slot in that die. I'm going to pop those sections, the tree and the little tree pot, up on some foam adhesive, just to give that section a little bit of dimension as well. And now I'm going to just glue these little present pieces together. There's a little ribbon that gets glued onto the present, and I just took the little ribbon from the different colored presents and just kind of mixed up the colors of the ribbon on the present. So I didn't put the same color of ribbon on the box of that color. So that my little blue box has got a red ribbon, and another blue box has got kind of a green ribbon, and my red box has got a blue ribbon. And I'm going to glue those all on. I will distress all of these different pieces with my little distressing tool there, just to give them a little bit of an interesting look. And I'm going to also embellish all of those little presents with a little gold star. And that little gold star is one of the dies in, I believe it's in the Festive Things set. The Festive Things set also comes with a little die that looks like garland or maybe popcorn for the tree. You can cut that in whatever color you want. I just used a little bit of gray cardstock. You could actually do a little bit of metallic on that. That actually would have looked really cute. I already had it cut in the gray, so I didn't bother cutting it again, but that actually would have looked really pretty and shiny on the tree. So I'm just going to get that glued down. I do use liquid adhesive for all of these different little parts. I don't want them falling off. And besides, it would be virtually impossible to use any other kind of adhesive on these tiny little parts. So that makes it super easy. You can see I've got all of those different parts glued together now. And now I'm going to take a stab at this jolly old Saint Nick. And this has got a lot of pieces. I didn't show the process of cutting this out and putting it together on camera or on film, just because it's, you know what, it's kind of something that's probably not that much fun to watch. I will link the video from Sizzix where they show how to put this together. I'll link that up in the description box below so that you can go and find that video. I use that video to put my Santa together for sure, and it's a really easy way to create your Santa. I didn't have the big Merry Christmas die that goes along with this series. I really want it, but I didn't have it. I didn't buy it when I bought these other dies. I wish I had. I might still go back and do that. But so what I did was I went through my stash and I found something for a sentiment. Now this is just a little die cut piece there that I showed you. I showed you those little die cut frames and tags pieces there. I just thought this was perfect. It kind of has a vintage look to it. And this card definitely has a vintage look to it for sure. So I just thought this is really cute. It says Merry Christmas. And there's a really great spot on the back of the card to write a sentiment message to the recipient of this card. This could actually just be decor if you wanted it to. It wouldn't necessarily be something that you'd have to give out as a card at Christmas, but I think it's gorgeous. I think you could easily make this into a gift card holder or something else, you know, attach some tags to it and make it look even more festive. There's lots of things you could do with this. I love how this turned out. I think it's super cool. These Sizzix Tim Holtz colorized dies series are genius. Totally worth the time that it takes to put them together. I really enjoyed this process and I hope you did too. I'm going to leave some links below to help you create this yourself if you want to. And I hope you enjoyed this today. I hope you're enjoying my holiday series. Make sure that you stay tuned next week for more holiday series videos. I'm going to be working on my December album again, and I have lots of other ideas of things that I want to do for sure this year for my holiday series. Thanks so much for stopping by, guys. I really appreciate it. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you back here another time. Bye-bye.